The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground at New Haven Elementary School. Children's laughter filled the air as they ran between the swing sets and climbing frames. 8-year-old Alex Morrison pushed his twin brother Sam higher. On the swing, both boys giggling as Sam's feet kicked toward the pale blue sky. "Higher, Alex, I want to touch the clouds," Sam shouted, his dark hair whipping in the wind. Their father, Captain Jake Morrison, watched from the school's entrance with a smile. At 35, Jake had the weathered look of a career soldier, but his eyes softened whenever he looked at his boys. He checked his watch and called out to them. 5 more minutes, guys. Then we need to get home for dinner." New Haven was everything the early colonists had dreamed of when they first arrived 15 years ago. The planet offered clean air, fertile soil, and peaceful skies. 50,000 humans had made this world their home, building schools, hospitals, and farms that stretched across the green valleys. The colony thrived under the protection of the Galactic Federation, and attacks from hostile aliens seemed like ancient history from Earth's violent past. Dr. Lisa Hayes finished her rounds at the medical center just as the evening shift arrived. She was one of the colony's most respected doctors, known for her work with both human patients and the few friendly alien species that visited New Haven. Lisa had always believed that different species could live together in peace, and New Haven proved that dream could work. "Any word from the Federation Patrol?" she asked Commander Ryan Parker, who was reviewing security reports in the medical center's lobby. Ryan shook his head. He was visiting from Earth Navy Intelligence, conducting routine inspections of outer rim colonies. Nothing unusual. The Zephyrians have been quiet for months. Their ships stick to their own territory. Lisa nodded, though something in Ryan's tone made her pause. "You sound worried." "Not worried exactly. Just careful. The Zephyrians have been too quiet. Intelligence suggests they're planning something, but we don't know what." Meanwhile, Senator Maria Rodriguez was finishing a long day of communications with the Galactic Federation headquarters. As the colony's diplomatic liaison, she spent most of her time handling trade agreements and immigration papers. It was boring work, but it kept New Haven connected to the larger galactic community. "Another day, another 100 forms," she muttered to her assistant as she locked up her office. "At least the kids seem happy." She wasn't wrong. New Haven's children were thriving. They attended school alongside young aliens from peaceful species, learned about different worlds, and dreamed of exploring the galaxy when they grew up. The colony had become a model of what human civilization could achieve among the stars. But high above New Haven's atmosphere, something moved in the darkness between the stars. The Zephyrian fleet had been watching the colony for weeks. Their ships used advanced cloaking technology that made them invisible to human sensors. The aliens inside these ships were tall, gray-skinned creatures with large black eyes and long, thin fingers. They had been studying human children, taking detailed scans and making careful plans. Commander Vexitar stood on the bridge of the lead ship, studying holographic displays that showed every child in the colony. His species had built an empire on the backs of slaves taken from dozens of worlds, but humans represented something special. Human children showed remarkable adaptability and creativity that made them incredibly valuable. "The neural patterns are perfect," his science officer reported. "Human young possess cognitive flexibility that exceeds all other known species. Their brains can adapt to our enhancement procedures without rejection." Vextar nodded. The Zephyrian Collective had been searching for the perfect subjects for their bio-enhancement programs for centuries. They had experimented on countless species, but human children offered something unique. Their minds could be shaped and improved in ways that would create the ultimate soldiers and workers. "Begin the operation," Vextar ordered. "Remember, we need them alive and undamaged. Dead children are worthless to us." The attack began at sunset. Jake Morrison was reading bedtime stories to Alex and Sam when the first explosion shook their house. The lights flickered and both boys grabbed their father's arms. "Dad, what was that?" Alex whispered. Before Jake could answer, his military communicator crackled to life. "All Colonial Defense Force personnel report immediately. We are under attack. This is not a drill." Jake's blood turned cold. He kissed both boys on the forehead and looked into their frightened eyes. Stay in your room and hide under the bed. Don't come out until I come back for you, okay? We're scared, Dad, Sam said, tears starting to form. I know, buddy, but you're Morrison boys, and Morrison boys are brave. I'll be back soon. Jake grabbed his weapon and ran outside. The sky was filled with strange ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Green energy beams lanced down from the alien vessels, striking specific buildings throughout the colony. But these weren't random attacks. The aliens were targeting schools, playgrounds, and homes where children lived. Dr. Lisa Hayes was at the hospital when the attack started. She watched in horror as alien soldiers materialized inside the building using some kind of teleportation technology. These creatures moved with purpose, ignoring the adults and heading straight for the pediatric ward. Stop, she shouted, stepping in front of a group of Zephyrian soldiers. Those are sick children. The lead alien looked at her with emotionless black eyes. They will be healed. They will be improved. Stand aside. When Lisa refused to move, the alien stunned her with an energy weapon. She collapsed unconscious as the soldiers carried away every child in the hospital. Across the colony, the same scene played out hundreds of times. The Zephyrians moved with surgical precision, using their advanced technology to bypass human defenses and target only the children. Parents fought desperately to protect their young, but human weapons seemed useless against alien armor and shields. Captain Morrison led a squad of defenders toward the elementary school, where screams and energy weapon fire echoed through the night. He arrived just in time to see alien soldiers loading human children onto transport ships. Among them, he spotted Alex and Sam being carried away by a Zephyrian warrior. No! Jake screamed, firing his weapon at the alien ship. The energy bolts bounced harmlessly off the hull as the transport lifted into the sky. Bring them back! Commander Parker coordinated the defense from the colony's command center, but it was hopeless. The aliens had overwhelming technological superiority and seemed to know exactly where every child lived. Human forces couldn't even scratch the enemy ships. We need Federation support, he shouted into his communicator. Request immediate military assistance. The response came back. Minutes later, request denied. The Galactic Federation does not interfere in territorial disputes. Handle this through diplomatic channels. Parker stared at the message in disbelief. Diplomatic channels? They're stealing our children. The attack lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, 847 human children were gone. The Zephyrian ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind devastated families and a colony in shock. Senator Rodriguez survived because she had been working late in her office, but her 2 young daughters were among the missing. She sat in the ruins of her home, holding their empty beds and crying. Dr. Hayes woke up in her own hospital to find the pediatric ward completely empty. Every child patient was gone, from newborn babies to teenage cancer survivors. Captain Morrison stood in his son's bedroom, looking at the superhero posters on the walls and the toys scattered on the floor. His boys were somewhere in space, in the hands of creatures who saw them as nothing more than raw materials for experiments. The colony's survivors gathered in the town square as dawn broke over New Haven. Families wept for their missing children, while others tended to the wounded. The beautiful world they had built seemed hollow without the sound of children's laughter. Jake Morrison looked up at the empty sky and made a promise that would change the galaxy forever. We're coming for you, he whispered. Whatever it takes, we're bringing our children home. 3 months had passed since the night that changed everything. The colony of New Haven still stood, but it felt like a ghost town. Playgrounds sat empty, schools remained closed, and parents walked through the streets with hollow eyes and broken hearts. Captain Jake Morrison hadn't slept properly in weeks. He spent his days in the communications center, sending message after message to the Galactic Federation. Each response was the same: forms to fill out, committees to wait for, and empty promises that help would come eventually. Sir, another message from Federation headquarters, his aide said, handing him a data pad. Jake read the cold official language and threw the device across the room. 3 months. 3 months and all they send us is paperwork. Dr. Lisa Hayes found him there an hour later, staring at the broken communicator. She looked older now, her hair showing gray streaks that hadn't been there before the attack. The hospital felt empty without children's voices in the halls. "The Federation isn't going to help us, are they?" she asked quietly. Jake shook his head. "They call it a territorial dispute. They say we need to solve this through diplomatic channels with the Zephyrians. But the Zephyrians won't even respond to our messages. Then we solve it ourselves." The voice came from the doorway. Commander Ryan Parker stood there, but he looked different. He had resigned from Earth Navy Intelligence 2 weeks ago, tired of being told to follow orders that meant doing nothing. "Ryan, what are you talking about?" Lisa asked. "I'm talking about going after our kids ourselves. The military can't act officially, but there are people who will help us unofficially." Jake stood up, suddenly interested. "What kind of people?" "The kind who have children of their own. The kind who understand that some things are more important than politics." That evening, Ryan led Jake to a secret meeting in an abandoned warehouse outside the colony. Inside, Jake was surprised to see familiar faces. Other parents who had lost children, soldiers who had fought in the attack, and some people he didn't recognize. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan announced, "I want you to meet Admiral Chris Bennett." Tall man with silver hair stepped forward. Jake recognized him immediately. Bennett was Earth Fleet's most decorated war hero, famous for his victories in the Outer Rim conflicts. He was also, Jake learned, the grandfather of 2 children who had been taken from a different human colony 6 months earlier. "The government has tied my hands," Bennett said simply. "Officially, I can't do anything, but I have ships, weapons, and people who are willing to use them." Colonel Amy Stone stepped out of the shadows. She was a legend in Special Forces circles, known for missions that officially never happened. Her own daughter had been at New Haven Elementary when the Zephyrians attacked. "We've been working on this for weeks," she explained. "We know where the children are being held." Dr. Marcus Webb, a scientist who had lost his nephew in the attack, activated a holographic display. "The Zephyrians took our children to their homeworld Zephyria Prime. It's heavily defended, but we found weaknesses in their security." Jake stared at the star charts and ship designs floating in the air. "This is insane. You're talking about attacking the Zephyrian homeworld with what? A few stolen ships?" "Not stolen," Admiral Bennett corrected. "Borrowed. And not a few ships. We have 30 vessels crewed by volunteers from across human space. Word has spread about what happened here. People are angry, Jake. Really angry." Captain Tony Rivers, Jake's old friend from his military days, clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, Morrison. You know you can't just sit here waiting for politicians to save your boys." Over the next few days, Jake learned the full scope of what his fellow humans had been planning. The rescue force included retired military officers, civilian volunteers, and even some active duty personnel who had taken medical leave to join the mission. Dr. Webb had been studying Zephyrian technology captured during the attack. "Their ships are advanced, but they have blind spots. More importantly, we've learned why they wanted our children specifically." He showed them horrifying intelligence reports gathered by human spies. The Zephyrians had been abducting children from dozens of species for centuries, using them in experiments to create enhanced soldiers and workers. But human children were special. Their brains could adapt to alien modifications without rejection. "They're not just experimenting on our kids," Webb explained. "They're trying to create a new kind of being. Part human creativity, part alien enhancement. Our children are the raw material for their perfect soldiers." Colonel Stone had been running reconnaissance missions for weeks, gathering intelligence on Zephyrian defenses. The good news is that their homeworld security is designed to keep big fleets out, not small strike teams. The bad news is that we only get one chance at this. As the team prepared for their mission, disturbing reports came in from other human colonies. The Zephyrians had struck again, taking children from 3 more worlds. Each attack was surgical, precise and impossible to stop with conventional defenses. Senator Maria Rodriguez, who had lost her own daughters, used her diplomatic connections to quietly gather intelligence on Zephyrian slave operations. What she found made her sick to her stomach. "It's worse than we thought," she told the assembled rescue team. The Zephyrians have been doing this for over 1,000 years. They have children from hundreds of worlds, but human children are their newest prize. They call us perfect adaptive specimens. Jake felt rage building in his chest. His boys, his innocent boys, were being treated like lab rats by creatures who saw them as nothing more than useful materials. Admiral Bennett showed them the ships they would use, sleek vessels designed for stealth and speed rather than heavy combat. We can't fight the entire Zephyrian fleet, but we can get in, grab our kids, and get out before they know what hit them. The volunteers came from everywhere. Parents who had lost children, soldiers who were disgusted by their government's inaction, and civilians who simply couldn't stand by and do nothing. They trained in secret, using abandoned military bases and remote asteroids. Dr. Lisa Hayes joined the medical team, determined to help treat the children when they were rescued. She had been studying Zephyrian bioenhancement procedures, trying to understand what had been done to the human children and how to reverse it. Some of them might be changed, she warned. We don't know what the aliens have done to their minds and bodies. We need to be prepared for anything. As the launch date approached, Jake found himself thinking about his sons every moment. Were they still alive? Had the aliens hurt them? Were Alex and Sam wondering why their father hadn't come to save them yet? Captain Rivers found him staring at pictures of the boys on his personal communicator. We're going to get them back, Jake, all of them. What if we're too late? What if they've already... Jake couldn't finish the sentence. Then we make sure the Zephyrians pay for what they've done. But I don't think we're too late. The intel suggests they keep the children alive for extended periods. The enhancement process takes time. On the night before the mission launched, the rescue team held a final briefing. Admiral Bennett stood before the assembled volunteers, parents, soldiers, doctors, and engineers who had risked everything for a chance to save their children. Tomorrow we launch the largest unauthorized military operation in human history, he said. Officially, this mission doesn't exist. If we succeed, the credit goes to the children we save. If we fail, the blame falls on us alone. Colonel Stone stepped forward. We have 30 ships and 800 volunteers. The Zephyrians have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. But they made one mistake. They took our children. And now they're going to learn what happens when you threaten a human's family. Jake looked around at the faces surrounding him. These people had given up everything, careers, safety, even their lives, for a chance to bring home their children. He thought about Alex and Sam somewhere in the darkness of space waiting for rescue. Let's go get our kids, he said simply. The ships launched before dawn, disappearing into hyperspace on a course for Zephyria Prime. Behind them, they left families praying for their return and governments that would deny any knowledge of their existence. But ahead of them lay the most heavily defended world in Zephyrian space, and 847 human children who needed to come home. The rescue fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system. 30 human ships hung in the darkness, dwarfed by the massive alien homeworld that glowed purple in the distance. Zephyria Prime was 3 times the size of Earth, covered in sprawling cities and protected by orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the sensor readings. Target confirmed. The children are being held in the research complex on the northern continent. Captain Jake Morrison felt his heart pounding as he looked at the alien world. Somewhere down there, his sons Alex and Sam were waiting for rescue. He had trained for this moment for months, but now that it was here, the reality seemed overwhelming. 30 ships against a whole planet, muttered Captain Tony Rivers from the pilot's seat. We must be crazy. Colonel Amy Stone's voice crackled over the communication system from her assault ship. Remember, we're not here to fight their entire military. We get in, grab the kids, and get out. Speed and surprise are our only advantages. Dr. Marcus Webb had spent weeks studying the Zephyrian defense systems. Their sensors are designed to detect large fleets, not small groups. If we split up and approach from different angles, we might make it to the surface. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The fleet would divide into 3 groups, each taking a different route to the planet, Colonel Stone would lead the ground assault team directly to the research facility, while Admiral Bennett's ships provided distraction by attacking the orbital defenses. Dr. Lisa Hayes checked her medical equipment one more time. Remember, some of these children might be injured or changed by the alien experiments. We need to be ready for anything. The attack began at dawn on Zephyria Prime. Admiral Bennett's ship struck first, hitting the outer defense platforms with everything they had. Explosions lit up the space around the planet as human weapons met alien shields. The Zephyrian response was swift and brutal. Massive warships launched from hidden bases, their weapons far more powerful than anything the humans possessed. "We can't hold them for long," Bennett shouted over the sound of alarms. "Stone, you have 20 minutes before they overwhelm us." Colonel Stone's assault team had already entered the atmosphere, their ships racing toward the surface at dangerous speeds. Behind them, Zephyrian fighters gave chase, filling the sky with green energy bolts. Captain Nina Foster piloted one of the assault ships, weaving between the alien weapons fire. "I count 50 enemy fighters on our tail." "Let them come," Stone replied grimly. "We're not leaving without our children." The research complex was a massive structure built into the side of a mountain. It stretched for miles underground, filled with laboratories and holding cells where the Zephyrians conducted their experiments. Human intelligence had located the children in the deepest levels, protected by layers of security. Lieutenant Dan Cooper led the first team to breach the facility's outer walls. At only 22 years old, he was the youngest member of the assault force, but he fought with the fury of someone who had a personal stake in the mission. His little sister had been taken from another colony months earlier. "Charges set," Cooper called out as explosions rocked the alien building. "We're in." The rescue teams poured through the breach, fighting their way past Zephyrian guards and automated defenses. The aliens had been caught off guard by the sudden attack, but they were organizing quickly. Jake Morrison followed close behind the assault teams, his weapon ready. He had volunteered for the ground mission despite his lack of special forces training. Nothing was going to keep him from reaching his sons. The deeper they went into the facility, the more horrifying it became. The walls were lined with cells containing children from dozens of different species. Some looked normal, but others had been changed by alien experiments. Extra limbs, modified eyes, or stranger alterations that made Jake's stomach turn. "My God," whispered Dr. Hayes as they passed a room full of medical equipment designed for creatures much smaller than adult Zephyrians. "What have they been doing down here?" They found the human children in a section labeled Primary Subjects, in the alien language. The cells were filled with kids from New Haven and other human colonies ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Many looked sick and frightened, but they were alive. "Dad!" The voice cut through the chaos of battle like a knife. Jake spun around to see Alex and Sam pressed against the bars of their cell, tears streaming down their faces. "Boys!" Jake ran to them, his hands shaking as he worked to open the cell door. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" "We're okay, Dad," Alex said, though both boys looked thin and scared. "But some of the other they took them away and they came back different." Colonel Stone was coordinating the evacuation when the facility's main computer system activated an emergency protocol. Red lights flashed throughout the complex as automated voice announced something in the Zephyrian language. Dr. Webb quickly translated. "They're initiating a lockdown. All exits are sealing and they're flooding the lower levels with some kind of gas." "How long do we have?" Stone demanded. "Maybe 10 minutes before this whole place becomes a death trap." The rescue teams worked frantically to free the children, but there were hundreds of them spread across multiple levels. Some were too weak to walk, others were unconscious from the alien experiments, and a few had been changed so much that they barely looked human anymore. Lieutenant Cooper had found his sister Emma in one of the deepest cells. She was alive but different. Her eyes had been changed to see in multiple spectrums and her hands had been modified with extra joints. She was still his sister, but the aliens had turned her into something else. "Emma, it's me, it's Dan," he said softly, trying not to show his horror at what had been done to her. She looked at him with those strange new eyes and smiled weakly. "I knew you would come. I told the others you would come for us." Above them, Admiral Bennett's fleet was being torn apart. The Zephyrian warships were simply too powerful, and human ships were exploding one by one. But Bennett held his position, buying precious time for the rescue teams below. "Sir, we need to retreat," his communications officer shouted. "We've lost 18 ships." "Not yet," Bennett replied, watching the tactical display. "They're not finished down there." In the research facility, the rescue teams had managed to free 623 children, but dozens more were still trapped in the deepest levels. The lockdown had sealed those areas, and the gas was making it impossible to reach them. Jake Morrison stood with his sons in the evacuation corridor, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. Somewhere below, other parents' children were still trapped, and time was running out. "Dad, we have to go," Sam said, tugging on his father's arm. "The bad air is coming." Jake looked at his boys. Thin, scared, but alive and mostly unchanged by their ordeal. Then he looked at Colonel Stone, who was staring at the sealed door that led to the remaining children. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "There is," Stone replied grimly. "But it means staying behind to manually override the lockdown. Someone has to hold the position while the others escape." Jake knew what she was asking. Someone had to sacrifice themselves to save the remaining children. He looked at Alex and Sam, then at the other parents who were clutching their rescued children. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "Dad, no," both boys screamed at once. Jake knelt down and hugged them tightly. "Listen to me. I need you to be brave one more time. Go with the others and get home safe. Tell everyone what happened here. Make sure people know what these aliens did to you." Colonel Stone placed a hand on his shoulder. "Morrison, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Jake replied. "These kids need someone to stay, and I need to make sure every child gets home." The evacuation ships launched from the facility just as the Zephyrian reinforcements arrived. Jake Morrison and a handful of volunteers stayed behind, fighting to reach the remaining children as the complex began to collapse around them. In space, Admiral Bennett watched the rescue ships escape the atmosphere. They had saved most of the children, but the cost had been enormous. Half his fleet was gone, and good people had died to make this rescue possible. But as the ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their precious cargo of rescued children back to human space, Bennett knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone stole human children. The images and stories from the rescued children would spread across human space like wildfire, and humanity's response would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The rescue ships limped back to human space carrying their precious cargo of 623 children. But the images and videos they brought with them would change everything. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked around the clock, treating the rescued children, documenting every injury and modification the Zephyrians had made to young human bodies. 18 months had passed since that rescue mission, and the galaxy was burning. President Karen Walsh stood before the assembled leaders of human space in the Great Hall on Earth. The woman who had once preached peace and diplomacy now wore the uniform of a war leader. Behind her, massive screens showed the systematic destruction of Zephyrian worlds. "They thought we were weak because we preferred talking to fighting," she said, her voice carrying to every human colony through the communication networks. "They thought our kindness made us easy targets. They were wrong." The war had started small, with raids on Zephyrian outposts and supply lines. But when the rescued children told their stories to the galaxy, everything changed. Humanity had united, in a way not seen since the early days of space colonization. Every human world contributed ships, weapons, and soldiers to what they called the Children's War. Admiral Steve Hunter commanded the largest human fleet in history as it approached Zephyria Prime for the final assault. 10,000 ships from 47 different species filled the space around the alien homeworld. The Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They hadn't only been stealing human children. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from the Zephyrian government," his communications officer reported. Hunter looked at the tactical display showing the burning remains of the Zephyrian outer colonies. "Tell them we don't accept surrenders. From child killers. On the bridge beside him stood Major Lisa Grant, one of the survivors of the original attack on New Haven. She had lost her young daughter in that raid, and the months of war had hardened her into something the old galaxy had never seen, a human driven by pure vengeance. "How many ships are left in their defense fleet?" she asked. "Maybe 2,000, Hunter replied. "They're completely outnumbered." The Zephyrian Collective had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, built on the slavery and suffering of countless species. Their technology was advanced, their fleets were powerful, and their empire stretched across hundreds of worlds. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity. Humans didn't fight for territory or resources. They fought for family. And when their children were threatened, humans didn't seek proportional response. They sought total victory. Commander Alex Morrison stood on the bridge of his own ship, the young man barely recognizable as the 8-year-old boy who had been rescued from the Zephyrian research facility. The experiments had changed him in small ways. Enhanced reflexes, improved memory, better healing, but his heart was still purely human. At 26, he wore the uniform of Earth Fleet and carried the rage of his entire species. "This is for Dad," he whispered, looking at the planet where his father had died to save other children. The final battle began at dawn on Zephyria Prime, just as his father's rescue mission had 18 years earlier. Human ships poured into the system like an unstoppable flood. The weapons they carried had been developed during the war years, when human scientists worked day and night to create tools of vengeance. Some of these weapons frightened even the humans who built them. The planetary cracker missiles struck first, boring deep into the planet's crust before detonating nuclear charges that would split continents. The Starkiller satellites surrounded the system's sun, preparing to destabilize it if necessary. The atmosphere burners would turn the planet's air into fire if any Zephyrians tried to hide, but the most terrifying weapons were the humans themselves. Major Grant led the ground assault on the research facility where human children had been tortured for years. Her soldiers moved through the complex with surgical precision, eliminating every Zephyrian they found. These weren't the desperate volunteers who had rescued the children 18 months ago. These were professional soldiers trained specifically to destroy the species that had hurt their young. "Sir, we found the main laboratory," reported Sergeant Mike Wilson over the radio. "You need to see this." Grant entered a vast chamber filled with thousands of containers holding children from dozens of species. Most were dead, preserved in alien chemicals for study. Others had been changed so much they could barely be called the same species anymore. "Burn it all," she ordered. "Every last piece of equipment, every computer, every file. I want this place erased from existence." The soldiers set their charges with grim satisfaction. When the facility exploded, it took with it 1,000 years of alien research into transforming stolen children into slave soldiers. Above the planet, Admiral Hunter received reports from the other battle zones. Human fleets had simultaneously attacked every major Zephyrian world, and the results were always the same: total destruction. The aliens' advanced technology meant nothing when facing an enemy that refused to accept anything less than complete victory. "Admiral, the Galactic Federation is demanding we stop the attack," his aide reported. "They're threatening to intervene." Hunter laughed bitterly. "Where were they when our children were being stolen? Tell them that any ship that interferes with this operation will be treated as an enemy." The Galactic Federation had discovered too late that they had created a monster. For years, they had ignored reports of Zephyrian child slavery, calling it an internal matter, and refusing to get involved. Now humanity was showing them the cost of that indifference. President Walsh had made it clear to the galaxy's leaders: anyone who had known about the child slavery and done nothing was complicit. Several Federation member species had already switched sides, bringing their own fleets to join humanity's crusade. Others had fled to distant galaxies rather than face human justice. Commander Morrison led his squadron in the final assault on the Zephyrian capital city. The massive structures that had stood for millennia crumbled under human weapons designed specifically to cause maximum destruction. There would be no rebuilding, no recovery, no second chances. Target the government complex, he ordered. Make sure none of their leaders escape. Dr. Sophie Miller worked frantically in the field hospital set up on the planet's surface. She was treating human soldiers wounded in the assault, but also the few Zephyrian children they had found in the research facilities. Even in their rage, humans couldn't bring themselves to hurt alien children. It went against everything they believed in. How many survivors? She asked her assistant. Maybe 50,000 Zephyrians left on the entire planet, came the reply. The rest evacuated or didn't make it. The battle for Zephyria Prime lasted 3 days. When it was over, the planet's surface was cracked and burning. The star system's sun flickered as human weapons destabilized its core. Within a year, the entire system would be uninhabitable. Admiral Hunter stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the alien homeworld burn. Beside him, Major Grant held a picture of her daughter, who had died in the Zephyrian research labs. Is it enough? She asked quietly. Hunter thought about all the human children who had suffered and died, about Captain Morrison's sacrifice, about the parents who would never see their kids again. No, he said finally, but it's a start. The news of Zephyria Prime's destruction spread across the galaxy in hours. Some species celebrated the end of the Zephyrian slave empire. Others trembled at what humanity had become. A few began making plans to flee to other galaxies before humans turned their attention to other targets. In the aftermath, humanity emerged as the galaxy's dominant military power. The old Galactic Federation collapsed as member species chose sides or simply disappeared. The rescued children, now adults, helped establish the new Galactic Alliance with one simple rule. The protection of the innocent was not negotiable. Alex Morrison stood before a memorial on New Haven, listing the names of every stolen child. His brother Sam stood beside him, both men now admirals in the human fleet. The inscription read, "They thought we were weak because we valued compassion. They learned that compassion makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about humanity. They were willing to share space with other species, willing to trade and cooperate and build peaceful civilizations together. But touch their children and they would burn your entire civilization to ash and scatter it across the stars. Human patrol fleets now traveled the galaxy's trade routes, ensuring no species would ever again suffer what the children of New Haven had endured. The message was clear to every alien civilization. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to abandon their young. The galaxy had peace now, but it was a peace enforced by the species that had learned what happened when someone stole human children. And in the ruins of Zephyria Prime, a monument stood with words that every species in the galaxy knew by heart. Never again.